In this lecture, I want to talk about Marxism and theology. Now, first, who was Marx, or who was Karl Marx? Marxism is a philosophy that was first brought to the scholarly world by Karl Marx himself. The man lived between 1818 to 1883. Marx was himself a Jew born in a venerable city in Rhineland, Prussia, that became one of the 26 provinces that make Germany after the unification of 1871. And he was a baptized Christian who eventually became an atheist. Despite his later protestation and dismissiveness against religion, he was a son of a distinguished jurist and a grandson of a rabbi, that is, a Jewish teacher. As a philosophy, Marxism came as a protest against religion after Karl Marx himself became an atheist, following his denunciation of all Christian ideals. For Marxists, or the followers of Karl Marx, or subscribers to Marxism, religion is the opium of the people, because it tells its adherents, do not worry, worry not, heaven is waiting for us. It also holds that religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the sentiment of a heartless world, the soul of the soulless conditions, the opium of the people. Why? As Karl Marx was growing, he noted that Christianity and other religions had ignored the problem of the society and merely were waiting to go to heaven. For failure to solve cutting-edge problems facing society, Marx saw religion as nothing but escapism. In religion, he saw escapism that was devoid of addressing realities of the day. As the philosophy reached the global and scholarly scene, it got so many admirers who embraced it as it is, and others who embraced it with a pinch of salt, who became neo-Marxists. So we have Marxists and neo-Marxists. The latter made some revisions to this philosophy. Among its ardent admirers is Vladimir Ulyanov Lenin, the founder of communist Russia in 1917. Lenin went further to define religion as the opium for the people, not of the people now, but as the opium for the people, that which makes people foolish. He thought that religion and God were created by capitalists who were exploiters of the ordinary people. The idea was to make people docile and content in their wanting situations. It was religion is a way of bread-folding people, according to Marxism. Lenin went on to advocate military action against religion in order to hasten the process of letting religion die completely. In Lenin's view, religion hinders people from taking decisive and active part in solving the pressing problems of life. Now, when we come to theology and Marxism, we need to appreciate that Marx's economic writings reflect his political and social concerns, which in turn stem from his early humanist judgments on inequality and injustice. Marx regarded religion as a real and persistent force in society. It was a very important factor in shaping human history, and it had to be strenuously opposed for the sake of a more humane and just social order. The West was counter-revolutionary because it was committed to capitalism and nominally Christian as he saw it. Therefore, Marx was to be opposed and resistant. Owing to the Marxist wave, several attempts by the Christian nations, the so-called Christian nations, was made. And in 1950, United States of America Senate, the US Senate, declared a holy crusade against Marxism. Because Marxism was saying, you capitalists, you created a religion to oppress the people, to use it as a tool to oppress people, to make people stupid, you stupefy people, and continue to dominate them. Highly explosive philosophy. Now, if you go to Italy, you take Italy for instance, the Roman Catholic Pope excommunicated members of the Communist Party. In such counterattacks, there was no possibility of dialogue between Christianity and Marxism. Clearly, it was necessary for Christians to listen to the Marxist critiques and react appropriately rather than merely employ an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, a foot for a foot, as we read Exodus 21:24 approach in the matter. So the Christians employed the Mosaic law to fight Marxists. Certainly, critics helps us to improve on certain designated areas. I'm saying that what was needed was to listen to Karl Marx and Marxism in order for Christians to know whether the critique was for their own good or it was meant to destroy them altogether. But the sad bit is the Christian employed militant tactics of getting their critics out of the way. In 1957, there was the emergence of the new left or neo-Marxism, neo-Marxism, which was less inclined to make atheism an issue, but challenged Christians to be true to the original revolutionary elements of primitive Christianity. Marxism Commission in Germany in 1958 and 59, the Commission expressed interest in dialogue between Christianity and Marxism. So at the end of the day, after fighting Marxism for their critique, almost physically, a voice of reason came up way back in 1958, where Marxism Commission was set up in 1958 to 1959. And the idea was to listen now to them with an open mind and hear what they had to tell the world. In 1958, Pope John the 23rd ascent to power marked a steady change in the attitude of the Roman Catholic Church from a tendency to criticize and condemn the world to a more universal openness to the end, and he brought in an expectation of goodness in people. The climate for dialogue was more favorable with the publication of Mater et Magistra in 1861, and Pacem in Terrace 1963, where the World Council of Churches was also actively involved in the dialogue with Marxism. So we see the coming of Pope John the 23rd as the leader of the Catholic Church in 1858 further strengthened Christian Marxist dialogue. So it is a question of let's listen to one another. Is your critique helpful? Let's see what it was really. As we focus on the Christian Marxist dialogue, it is significant to consider that both Christians and Marxists are both concerned about humanizing social conditions. Hence, that is a strong starting point. Second, both Christians and Marxists start with a human person as a social creature. Hence, they are anthropocentric. Although, of course, Christianity will say we are Christocentric, but in a sense, they are both Christianity and Marxism are anthropocentric, or their concern for man or humanity is very clear. So when Karl Marx was criticizing Christians for saying, let's wait for heaven, let's do nothing, let's just waste time, or let's just let those who are oppressing us continue oppressing us, because ours is heaven, Karl Marx was actually resisting a very bad trend, a very bad trajectory where people don't resist injustice. After all, Christianity is a revolutionary faith. Jesus himself was a revolutionarist in the sense that he challenged the status quo. Yes, somebody daring the entire Roman Empire, somebody coming up with new teachings beside the Mosaic law, although he said he did not come to destroy it. He's a revolutionarist in a sense, somebody wanting to change the status quo and transform the society. So Marxism was just, Karl Marx was just a frustrated person who felt he wanted to break away after realizing that Christianity is letting him down by not taking action on matters that matter. Martin Luther King later came to say, a person who will do nothing for what matters does not even stand the test of time, or is missing in action and is in the wrong side of history, to paraphrase him. A human being is not an abstract. Generally, we know this. A human being is not an isolated creature who is content in oneself. A human being lives in association with other human beings. A human person is a social being. That is the fundamental qualifications for human existence. A human person has to be in actual solidarity with other people. Certainly, it is the Marxists who insist on the phrase solidarity or togetherness, a term which is also relevant to Christians in general, especially when they insist on fellowships. Fellowships and togetherness or solidarity, they are more or less synonymous. Clearly, being in fellowship with others or in solidarity with others is a way of human fulfillment in a personal and social sense. In Marxist's original use of the term solidarity, it means being in fellowship with the poor and oppressed, those oppressed lot in society. That both Christianity and Marxism take history seriously as a significant dimension of human existence. Human persons are not abstract, they are not general, they are not human beings, are not metaphysically prefabricated substances, but rather they are historical creatures that exist and participate within a concretely given historical conditions and relations. Human beings are agents and subjects of history. History is their sphere of responsibility. history is a forum in which their business is transacted. So you can see now all those issues I'm raising here are really contained in Marxism Christian dialogue. And it shows there's no real crash. The crash is when Marx says there's no God, or it becomes an atheist out of frustration. The fourth point we may consider is both Christianity and Marxism have unified and completed worldviews, capable of giving meaning to a host of details in the right of totality, of transforming everyday life, and of bringing a message of hope to humanity. You see, all of them, both Christians and Marxists, they are in a quest for bringing hope to hopeless people, people walking through the valley of the shadow of death. But you see, the approach is what differs. The difference is the approach or the methodology. The methodology differs, but the idea appears to be close. Now, these visions aim to enable people to fulfill themselves as an end. They direct their action and the movement of history and of nature to this end. The human person or the human persons are instruments. They are the principal architects through personal and communal action. Their action is aimed at the construction of another city in which people will be able to live together and in which humanity will really be an end. This implies humanization of the economic relationship. Of course, when you talk of capitalism, you see sometimes it's being accused generally, even by Christians themselves, of wrecking human face and just concentrating on profit, which is something everyone should protest. So we need humanization of economic relationships. Now, the whole history is constituted by a vast movement to liberate and unify humanity, the human community, and indeed the whole universe. The fifth point as a wind-up is in his early writings, where Karl Marx noted that capitalism was approaching a point where its internal contradiction, that is social conflict, must openly erupt and destroy the system itself. In purporting his conflict theory, Karl Marx held that the society is in a state of perpetual conflict. That is, the conflict will never come to an end. This conflict is a byproduct of competition for limited resources. Now, social order is maintained by domination and raw power by the capitalists that ignores democratic practice of consensus. While basing his social conflict theory on dialectical materialist account of history, Karl Marx and the resultant Marxism posited that capitalism, like previous socioeconomic systems, will inevitably produce internal tensions as the oppressed revolt, and this will lead to its own destruction. He looked forward to the overthrow of the status quo. Marx's health, however, deteriorated steadily as from 1870 due to respiratory problems. Hope there was no COVID those days. And of course, this led to his ultimate death on March 14, 1883, with an enormous amount of manuscript that he had penned down. Undoubtedly, his ideas are a good starting point for the Christian Muslim dialogue, Christian Marxist dialogue. They are starting point for many dialogues that we want to have, as they offer a perceptive critique to conservative Christianity that shuns politics, economics, ethics, aesthetics, religious dialogue, and other pillars of culture. In conclusion on this, Christianity has to affirm the evangelical inspiration of certain truths present in other systems, for example, in Marxism. Christianity has to agree that truth is truth, whether spoken by Marxist, spoken by a Muslim, spoken by a Buddhist, spoken by Confucianists, people in other faiths like Rastafarians. Truth is truth. They must get out of the cocoon of conservatism and be forward-looking. Further, Christianity has to get back to the roots of its original personalistic and communal inspirations, so that it asserts socio-economic praxis more decisively into the whole scheme of things. This will eventually trigger positive maturation from within at a pluralistic expression of the criterion of value and of faith. In so doing, Christianity will shed the Marxist tag of being unrealistic, impractical, and unconcerned with the real issues facing society. Hence, Christianity will no longer be seen as the opium of the people at any one time.